Okay, starting on the second page, number 9, asks us to factor, but given one of our solutions. So it's given us x equal to 3, and we're using synthetic division to help us. So we already know right away that one of our factors is x minus 3, because that's where this 3 came from. If I were to set x minus 3 equal to 0, I'd get x equals 3. So I can already, before I even do the problem, rule out A as an option because it doesn't have an x minus 3. But that's about all I can do, so I'm going to go ahead and do the synthetic division. So I have 3 as my factor, and then I'm listing the coefficients in front of each of my x terms. So I have 1, -7, 10, 14, and -24. And then I start at the very beginning by bringing down the 1. 1 times 3 is 3, and then I add down. So -7 plus 3 is a -4. -4 times 3 is a -12. 10 plus a -12 is a -2. -2 times 3 is a -6. 14 plus a -6 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. -24 plus 24 is 0. So I started with an x to the 4th polynomial, so I should now have an x to the 3rd polynomial, and these are the coefficients in front of each of my x terms. So I start with 1, x to the 3rd, minus 4x squared, minus 2x plus 8. And immediately I have 4 terms, so I can factor by grouping. So I'm going to go ahead and group each side. So on this side, I can pull out an x squared, and I'm left with x minus 4. This side, I don't want my x to be negative, so I'm going to pull out a -2, and I'm left with x. 8 divided by -2 is a -4. So my parentheses match, so I have x minus 4 and x squared minus 2. So if I come over here, I have x minus 4, x squared minus 2, and x minus 3. So my answer is C. Number 10 is the exact same thing. So I start by doing, first of all, I know that one of my factors will be x minus 2 because of this 2. So the answer is not A. Then I'm going to go ahead and do synthetic division. So I have 1, 1, -8, -2, and 12. So I'm going to start by bringing down the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. -8 plus 6 is a -2. -2 times 2 is a -4. -2 plus a -4 is -6. -6 times 2 is a -12. 12 plus a -12 is 0. So I started with an x to the 4th. I should now have an x to the 3rd. So I have 1x to the 3rd plus 3x squared minus 2x minus 6. And again, I have 4 terms, so I'm going to factor by grouping. So on this side, I can take out an x squared, and I'm left with x plus 3. This side, I take out a -2, and I'm left with x plus 3. So this factors to x plus 3 times x squared minus 2, which if I look here is option B. X plus 3, x squared minus 2, and my x minus 2. 11 and 12 are asking us to do the same thing except with long division. And I know you all prefer synthetic division, but we need to have some practice with long division since there are cases where you have to use long division. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write it over here so I hopefully have enough room to do it. So I have x minus 3, and I have x to the 4th minus 7x cubed plus 15x squared minus 21x plus 36. So I'm going to start at the very beginning, and I'm going to do x to the 4th divided by x. Now if I divide out one of the x's, I should just have one less x. So instead of the 4th, I have x to the 3rd. So every time you should kind of be going down by 1 power. That can kind of help make sure you're doing things right. So then I do x cubed times x is x to the 4th. X cubed times -3 is -3x cubed. And then I've got to subtract this. So x to the 4th minus x to the 4th is 0. -7x to the 3rd minus a -3. So -7 plus 3 is a -4x cubed. And then I bring down my 15x squared and do that same process again. So negative 4x cubed divided by x is a negative 4x squared. Negative 4x squared times x is a negative 4x cubed. Negative 4x squared times a negative 3 is a positive 12x squared. So a negative 4x cubed minus a negative 4x cubed cancels. 15x squared minus 12x squared is 3x squared. Then I bring down my minus 21x. 3x squared divided by x is 3x. And then 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times negative 3 is a negative 9x. So I'm going to subtract this. 3x squared minus 3x squared cancels to 0. Negative 21x minus a negative 9x. So negative 21 plus 9 is a negative 12x. And then I bring down my 36. And this should be my last time. So negative 12x divided by x is a negative 12. Negative 12 times x is a negative 12x. Negative 12 times 3 is 36. So then, if I subtract these, they cancel. Subtract these, they cancel. So I don't have a remainder. So I have x cubed minus 4x squared plus 3x minus 12. And again, I have 4 terms, so I can factor this by grouping. So over here, I can factor out an x squared, and then I'm left with x minus 4. Here I can cancel out, or factor out a 3, and I'm left with x minus 4. So my parentheses term is x minus 4, and then left I have x squared plus 3. So if I come back up to number 11, x squared plus 3 and x minus 4, it looks like I have that option on part D. And the x minus 3 comes from this factor that we were given. So this is part D. Okay, and I want you to try number 12. I'm going to tell you that the answer is C, so you can check yourself. But try it the same way we did number 11. I know polynomial long division is what people struggle with the most, so I want to make sure that you try one on your own. And we'll do another one in a minute when we have to do it and then solve. So number 13, we're now factoring. So all the rest of these problems are problems we've already done on the multiple choice, but it's just show your work version so I can make sure that you're not just guessing well, that you actually know what you're doing. So if we start here, this is an x to the 4th. So it looks like a quadratic, but because I have a 4th degree polynomial, this is called a quadratic type. So I'm going to solve it the way that I solve a quadratic. So a times c is negative 30, and b is 1. So I need two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to 1. I know that they're probably going to be 6 and 5, but I've got to figure out which one's negative to add to 1. If I have a negative 6 plus 5, that's a negative 1, so that doesn't work. But a 6 plus a negative 5 is a positive 1, so that would work. Now, if this were a regular quadratic, then this would just factor to x plus 6 times x minus 5, since a is equal to 1. But because this is to the 4th, the only change that we make is this is x squared plus 6 and x squared minus 5. And this just says to factor, it doesn't say to solve, so I'm done right there. This is my solution. Number 14 looks very similar to the factoring by using the sum of cubes formula that we did earlier, but this one is a difference of cubes. So we need the difference of cubes formula, which I'll go ahead and write for you right here. So I have a cubed minus b cubed is equal to a minus b times a squared plus ab plus b squared. So first of all, I need to rewrite this as something cubed minus something cubed. So my x cubed is fine. If I take the cube root of 125, I get 5. So this is the same as x cubed minus 5 cubed. So my a is x, my b is 5. So everywhere there's an a over here, I'm going to plug in an x. Everywhere there's a b over here, I'm going to plug in a 5. So I start with a minus b, which is x minus 5, and then a squared is x squared plus a times b, which is x times 5, or 5x. b squared is 5 squared, which is 20. And then again, because this just says to factor and not to solve, I'm totally done, and that's my solution. Number 15 has 4 terms, so to factor and solve this, I'm going to factor and solve by grouping. So I'm going to group this side and group this side. So over here, I can factor out a p squared, and I'm left with 5p minus 2. Over here, again, I don't want this negative here, so I'm going to factor out something negative, and then the greatest common factor between 25 and 10 is 5. So then I'm left with 5p, 10 divided by negative 5 is a minus 2. So my parentheses match, so I have 5p minus 2 times p squared minus 5. So if all it asked me to do was factor, this would be my answer, but this says to factor and solve. So I'm going to set each of these equal to 0, so 5p minus 2 equal to 0, and p squared minus 5 equal to 0. So over here, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, so 5p equals 2, divide both sides by 5, p equals 2/5. So my first solution is 2/5. And if I come over here, I add 5 to both sides, so p squared equals 5. Then I take the square root of both sides. Every single time I take the square root of something, I get a positive and a negative answer. And since the square root of 5 doesn't simplify, that's my final solution. So I have plus or minus the square root of 5. So this gives me one solution and then the positive and negative solution. So this is 2 solutions. So 3 total solutions. And if I look up here, my highest exponent's a 3, so I should have 3 solutions. Number 16 is a quadratic where a is not equal to 1. So I'm going to start with my AC and b. So AC is 2 times negative 3, which is a negative 6. My b is 5. So 2 numbers that multiply to negative 6 and add to 5 are negative 1 and 6. Now because a is not equal to 1, I've got to rewrite this as 2k squared minus 1k plus 6k minus 3. So over here, the only thing I can take out is a k, and I'm left with 2k minus 1. Over here, I can factor out a 3, and I'm left with 2k minus 1. So now my parentheses match, and I have 2k minus 1 times k plus 3. So I set each of these equal to 0, 2k minus 1 equal to 0, k plus 3 equal to 0. And if I solve each of those, then k equals 1/2 and negative 3. All right, 2 more to go. So these last 2 problems, we're going to use division in order to solve. So I'm starting with number 17, and I'm doing synthetic division on this one. And this says to use synthetic or polynomial, so you get to pick. I assume most of you will probably pick synthetic on both. So I'm just going to do number 17. I'm going to let you try number 18. So number 17, start with a 2. And my coefficients are 1, negative 5, 2, 20, and negative 24. So I start by bringing down the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3. Negative 3 times 2 is a negative 6. 2 plus negative 6 is negative 4. Negative 4 times 2 is a negative 8. 20 plus a negative 8 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. Negative 24 plus 24 is 0. So I started with an x to the 4th. I now should have an x to the 3rd. So 1x to the 3rd minus 3x squared minus 4x plus 12. So factoring by grouping, I'm going to group each side. This side I can take out an x squared times x minus 3. This side I'm going to take out a negative 4 times x minus 3. So I have x minus 3 and x squared minus 4. And if I set each of these equal to 0, oh, just kidding, this asks me just to factor. So I have x minus 3, x squared minus 4, if I factor with difference of squares, factors out to x minus 2 times x plus 2, plus this solution gives me another x minus 2. And this is my final solution. So I want you to try number 18 on your own.